Does this scenario sound familiar? You invest in a campaign, you invest in a website, you want customers to reach out, and one does. They land on your site, fill out a form, send an email with an inquiry. The email hits your company inbox or goes straight to a salesperson and it just sits there for hours, sometimes a day or two. In theory, we all know that speed matters when responding to an inquiry like this, but in practice, when it's one of dozens of emails landing in your salesperson's inbox, they can't always catch it, especially catch it fast enough and react in time. It gets even worse when the email goes to a general company inbox instead of directly to the salesperson. Because before the salesperson even knows something came in, someone else has to spot that email, forward it, add it to the CRM, and get it to the salesperson somehow. And precious minutes go by, often hours, sometimes God forbid days. There is a solution though, and I'll show you how to automate this entire process so that identifying, processing, and routing that email takes literally a few minutes instead of several hours. Let's start with some numbers. According to Revenue Hero research, 2/3 of B2B companies never respond to inquiries at all. Sometimes only an autoresponder goes out. 14.5 hours. That's the average time it takes a company to respond to an email inquiry. Only 1 out of 140 companies tested actually responded within 5 minutes. Conversion rates jump from 30 to 67% when you make immediate contact from a form versus waiting a few hours. There's a 21 times greater chance of qualifying a lead when you respond in 5 minutes versus 30, and 82% of customers expect an immediate response to a sales inquiry. These numbers come from various studies. Links to all of them are in the description. I encourage you to check them out. It's truly eye-opening. Now, some real cases from our experience and our workshops. A small company, just a few people, industrial sector. The boss tells us straight up, sales basically doesn't exist here. We just wait for customers to come to us. They tried hiring a salesperson. They have a CRM, but nobody uses it. The boss handles most things himself, and because he does everything alone, he's the bottleneck. Emails only reach the right people, or he responds to them himself when he happens to notice them and has the time. Second example, a larger company, about 30 people, renewable energy sector. During the process analysis, a total mess comes to light, both in the processes themselves and in how they are applied. Customer contact can simply drop off because an email got lost in the inbox. The problem isn't laziness, it's information noise. We live in a world with so many messages, alerts, and notifications that we simply can't process them all, at least not quickly and effectively. You get 100 emails a day, an invoice, spam, an important note from a colleague, some forward, and somewhere in there, a sales inquiry. You can't read everything at once, especially when you have a dozen other things to do. The solution we use is an email classifier. Every email goes through AI, which reads it, understands it, and classifies it. Let me describe the concept in its simplest form. You have a company mailbox with multiple categories. Let's say there are 4 basic ones: lead, an inquiry from a new potential client. An immediate notification should go to whoever handles sales. Client, our daily work, a very important email. It needs to be treated as a priority. Operationally, here we have invoices, contracts, logistics. Normal queue, it can wait. And of course spam, we ignore that entirely. You can add as many categories as you want. Our inbox has over a dozen, but the details don't matter here. They can always be expanded. What matters is the overall concept. The tool we use is N8N. An alternative could be Zapier, Make, or others. The key is to connect your mailbox to an automation that runs constantly and does all of this for you. First, when an email hits the inbox, it gets a label, whether in Gmail, Outlook, or wherever. Second, a notification on your phone. For a sales inquiry, the salesperson gets a message on Slack, an SMS, an entry in the CRM, whatever your company uses as its primary communication channel. Thirdly, optionally, you can make a draft of your answer. If responding to a client email is critical for you, then before the salesperson even reads the first message, they can already have a ready draft to refine and send quickly. So, what does the salesperson actually see when a sales inquiry comes in? First, an email drops into the company inbox. The salesperson doesn't even know about it yet. Second, within a few minutes, they get a notification, new lead, company name, inquiry topic, classification urgent. AI summarizes what the client is asking about, based on the ICP which we can define. Third, the salesperson knows immediately. No scrolling through 100 messages. Important email equals immediate action. 100 to 200 zlotys a month, depending on email volume and which tool you use. Implementation time, MVP plus 2 weeks of calibration, a few hours for someone who isn't familiar with automation tools. If you are familiar with them, you've probably already set this up, because it's one of the most basic automations you can build. But even once it's ready, you'll still need some time for calibration. It can go faster or slower. A lot depends on the specifics of your company. How many email accounts you have, how many categories, and what scope of integration you need. But in the end, when it comes to lead response time, you get minutes instead of hours. As always, there are things you need to watch out for. Nothing is perfect, nothing works flawlessly. First, false positives. In the beginning, the system will probably make mistakes. It needs to learn who your customers are, what to look for, and the nuances of your business. A really convenient option for non-technical people is putting the AI guidelines in a shared document, like a Google Doc. Salespeople or the boss can access it and tweak the instructions without ever having to open the automation tool itself, like N8N. The AI pulls those guidelines from the Google Doc every time and uses them to classify each email. Second, the Polish language. While it's not a major issue, it's worth noting that LLM systems generally work best with English, but adding a few email examples in Polish usually solves this. Third, the delay. The system is fast, but it's not completely instant. The inbox is checked every minute. The AI needs 10 to 20, sometimes several dozen seconds to properly interpret the email, assign a label, and then trigger any further automations. But that's still just a few minutes, not several or a dozen hours. We also need to keep in mind that email content travels through an API to various places, and we need to know exactly where it goes. If we use N8N, it's hosted in Europe, or we can set up our own hosting. That takes care of that. For the AI itself, we can either sign the appropriate data processing agreements or use something like Mistral, which runs on servers in Europe since it's a French LLM. We can also anonymize the data and email content before sending it to the AI, which also solves the problem. Before you turn on an automation like this though, definitely talk to a lawyer because it requires a few formalities. At minimum, a data processing agreement with the AI provider and an update to your privacy policy. At the beginning, I mentioned a salesperson who had the email but didn't call back because he didn't know he needed to. With this system, every email from a potential lead lands on the salesperson's phone within a few minutes, not several hours. In the description, there's a link to a basic N8N template. In the tool, you just go in, create a new workflow, and import it from a file. It's very simple. It works on a Gmail trigger. When an email comes in, the system checks it. It goes through all the new emails. If you received 5 in the last minute, each one gets checked separately. We edit the basic info about this new email. The AI receives it for analysis. The AI agent has 2 additional tools. First, it can pull all the inbox categories we've defined, and then it carefully assigns the most fitting category to the email based on its instructions. Soon I'll record a new episode showing what you can do after a new lead is identified. For example, checking the company, its business info, online presence, financial health, or drafting a response. The possibilities are really extensive. Everything I've talked about here is simply an implementation of the speed to lead concept, speeding up the response to a lead. For now, thanks for watching. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions, let me know. See you next time. Bye.